The next part of our program is the speaker series. We're going to have 3 speakers who are going to take a little longer individually, much like the earlier speeches today, around the theme of linking the region. So we have 3 different speakers who will provide a perspective on the various ways in which the region should be better linked, both with the other regions within Connecticut and the other centers along the Boston, D.C. corridor. You'll again hear from Director of Planning, my Deputy Director, Mark Nielsen, about some of the transformative actions that will help us to accomplish this goal, the priorities for the region. David Carroll will be with us to update us on the NEC Future effort to plan the future of the Northeast Corridor Rail. And Joe McGee will discuss the important linkages between the regions of Connecticut and how they can positively impact the state's economy. Following the 3 speakers, we will engage in a question and answer session again with the audience and with any of the other presenters and speakers who remain. Following that, we'll move on to Comptroller Kevin Lembo, whose address is entitled The New Railroad, Infrastructure for the New Economy. And he'll tell us a little bit more about the prospects and the investment strategies for gigabit technology, which is that on-ramp to that 100 gigabit backbone that runs from Boston to New York already. For any of you who saw Commissioner Katz's report released yesterday on the state of broadband, you know that we haven't done enough as a state to link up to this network and to attract the kinds of businesses who need to use that backbone. So, with no further ado, I'll introduce Joe McGee, who's the Vice President of Public Policy and Programs for the Business Council of Fairfield County. Joe has worked extensively with the business community, civic organizations, and government officials in the areas of economic development, transportation, housing, energy conservation, environment, and tax and fiscal policy. His community leadership roles reflect his commitment to these priorities. This year, Joe was appointed to 2 statewide policy committees. He is serving on the steering committee of the Water Planning Council and was named co-chair of the newly established Connecticut Commission on Economic Competitiveness. Thank you. Appointed by the Senate President Pro Tem. Before joining the Business Council of Fairfield County, Joe was a commissioner of the old DED, Department of Economic Development, which is where I met him originally. And he was also served as the chairman of the Connecticut Development Authority and the chairman of CII, Connecticut Innovations, Inc., from 1990 to 1994. Please help us extend a warm welcome to a true partner to our region, Joe McGee. Joe?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, good afternoon. I just have to say, this theater is extraordinary. This is my first time here. And when I was in college, I wrote a paper on the Pole Majestic Theaters in Connecticut, and I was principally looking at Bridgeport. But I knew Waterbury existed, but I've not seen this. This is just extraordinary. There's nothing like this. And the ones in Bridgeport, when I was commissioner, we spent money to fix the roof just so it wouldn't fall apart. But to see what that could be, what you've done here, just extraordinary. So thank you all. Let me do 2 parts. I want to talk a little bit about this Commission on Economic Competitiveness, which was established by the legislature last year, really in response to what happened in June in the budget, where the business community was extremely upset with the tax policy that was put forward. You know, a lot of people feel a tree of the GE move out of Connecticut, which is not really true. They did move out because of taxes. But the commission, this is the first time the legislature has had a permanent commission looking at economic competitiveness. And the reason I accepted it, I've been involved in the legislature, Connecticut government, for many, many years. The problem in the legislature is you have committees, the Commerce Committee, the Transportation Committee, the Appropriations Committee, Finance, Bonding. They all have their own agenda. And when you look at the economy and competitiveness, how do these things align? Does tax policy support economic growth strategies? And where do we look at the impact of tax regulations on business growth or on infrastructure? So I thought that creating the commission was a very good idea. Broad-based, Democrat, Republican, business, labor, all the players. What has happened is McKinsey, the global competitiveness, a global consulting firm which does a lot of work on economic competitiveness globally, but also in the U.S. They did the work in Ohio, Governor Kasich just touting. They've done a lot of work, Republican. They've done a lot of work in New York with Cuomo, particularly up in Buffalo, looking at how to revitalize that whole Buffalo economy. So what they're doing for Connecticut right now, they're doing a diagnostic on the Connecticut economy. We're looking for the first time, believe it or not, strengths and weaknesses, how we compare to other states, what our key sectors are, and then looking into those sectors like manufacturing to see which piece is shrinking, which piece is growing. So that at the end of this, we'll have exploded a lot of the myths that seem to drag Connecticut down right now, but it's everybody's moving out, the economy stinks, what's going on, to really just look at how is this economy in Connecticut performed over time and then going forward. I think that fact-based analysis will be very important in terms of setting priorities. Okay, so now I want to talk about infrastructure. Because what we're looking at are 5 key sectors. One of the most important is the issue of infrastructure and what that means to the economy and job growth. So I want to start here. So I'm from Fairfield County. There is a view that we are interested in the rail system going faster, more frequently, but we're not interested in the branch lines. I am here to tell you unequivocally that we're interested in the full rail system. And here's our view of it, coming from Fairfield County. We think building a new economic backbone in Connecticut, built on rail. In the 50s, we built the economic backbone of the state on highways, right? Everybody did. We're now saying that we've got to go almost back to the future, where we were before the highway system came into place, when we had 80 railroads operating in Connecticut, to relook at how we link our communities by rail. So, there's a theme here. 30-30-30. You may have heard of it. 30 minutes from Hartford to New Haven. 30 minutes from New Haven to Stamford. 30 minutes from Stamford to New York. 30 minutes from Waterbury to Norwalk. I mean, these are 30-minute increments that just about in any major population center in the state, by rail you're 30 minutes away from a job center. See how it works? Okay. Now, here's the challenge that we're going to face. These lights I can't see, so it's distracting me a little bit. We have the NEC Commission. You'll hear about that later. This is high-speed intercity, Boston to New York in 90 minutes, 220-mile-an-hour trains. Right? That's a good thing. Washington to Boston in 90 minutes, 2.5 hours, something like that. Now, the NEC, the Northeast Commission, has worked on this for a couple of years, spent $30 million, and they've made a series of recommendations for high-speed intercity. 3. 1 goes through Long Island, under Long Island Sound to New Haven, and into Connecticut, not up to Boston. Another goes New Rochelle, White Plains, across the Danbury, tunneling 60 miles through Connecticut, onto Hartford, Providence, Boston. There's alternatives to this. And then they're looking at the existing rail line. Can you run high-speed, 220-mile-an-hour trains on the existing 4-track bed of the New Haven line? The answer they've decided is no. But you can't mix high-speed and commuter rail. Now here's what I want to present to you. We are not opposed to getting to Boston in 90 minutes. But the key economic driver for economic growth in the state of Connecticut is not getting to Boston in 90 minutes. It's getting to work in 30. It's linking our communities together so that we can grow as a unit and see our economy unified in that fashion. It's 125,000 commuters a day use the train. And that's the lifeblood of our economy. These links to New York, to Boston, to New Haven, to Hartford, linking this is critical. because it begins to change your view of how the economy works. Waterbury no longer, as it could in the manufacturing age, and really that didn't even in the manufacturing age, but the view was these are self-contained cities that have their own workforce, their own factories, and they survive that way. And they compete with one another. We're competing globally now. Linking Stamford to Waterbury and to the Valley is critically important because of the need for skilled labor. The whole game today is about the quality of your labor force. And so it ties into school performance, universities, how we're beginning to adopt to the digital age. Just parenthetically, and I'll stop because we have a panel here, but if you look at the GE thing, the way the papers are playing it, GE left because the legislature raised their taxes. They don't pay any taxes. They pay property taxes, but that's not been the issue. They didn't like unitary, but we fixed that. The issue is much more powerful. GE decided to exit 57,000 jobs in GE Capital. One of the largest banks in the world was headquartered in Fairfield County. And that labor force is globally competitive in finance. It's a powerhouse. They decided, GE, to get out of that business. For them, the future wasn't in finance. Immelt, their chairman, when he appeared before our organization at a dinner, made that very clear. I've bought $100 billion worth of businesses. I've sold $100 billion worth of businesses. Nobody else in the history of the world has ever done that. And he's saying, we're changing this company. We are moving to digital industrial. We're leaving behind finance. That doesn't mean finance is bad. Finance is still doing very well in Connecticut, but GE left it. And the new world they're moving towards, this whole issue of digital, is really fascinating. And I'll close on this note. To understand this, we went to Indeed.com, which is located in Stamford, but it's a global company placing tech talent online. You may have heard of it. You want to look for a job, technology, you go and you search. So here is the world of tech talent. There are 12 cities in Europe that are tech hubs. 12. There are 8 cities in Asia. There are 4 cities in the US that are tech hubs globally. And they are New York, number 5th in the world. London's number 1. Beijing is number 2. I mean, you see this global world that's emerging. Boston is in the top 10, and then San Francisco and Austin. So the question, as the world changes and technology becomes embedded in old products and new ways of thinking, companies like GE who are part of that need to go where that talent and creative energy is. And they chose Boston. They could have chosen New York. They chose Boston because of the university structure, the creative environment, and the ability of them to tap into the talent that's going to drive that company for the next generation. Their view is we did not have that in Connecticut, particularly in a suburban location that they came to in 1974 when many companies fled New York City to go to suburban office parks like the one in Fairfield, that they couldn't take the next step with that company in a suburban office park. You can question that, but that's the decision they made. So what I'm saying here is this issue of understanding what's going on globally in the world of work, the enormous impact that technology is making, we in Connecticut have got to understand that. It's going to change the way we work. And it's going to change the way our universities prepare students for the world of work, and then how we connect cities together. Because in a state with small communities, we're not Boston, we're not New York, but if you begin linking us, it becomes really powerful. So it's not about Waterbury getting jobs more than Stamford or Bridgeport or Norwalk. It's about how these individual economies are linked and grow together. This is a critical issue to understand. And I think the issue of linking Waterbury into the New Haven line, the link to New Haven is critical, but that's where we have got to focus. This is going to be expensive. How we finance this is going to mark this generation of residents of this state. Our ancestors, 150 years ago, made a decision to invest in a rail system along the southern route of this state, the New Haven line. They built economies linking the ports to the rail, to the major markets, and they financed it. Our challenge is going to be how we link our existing cities to one another, to centers of academic excellence, and then how we grow our population. And I'll finish on this note. This state needs to grow to 4 million people in 5 years. It's at 3.5. We are losing population in almost every SMSA except the Stanford-Bridgeport one. This is a serious issue. Young people need to see Connecticut as a place to be and to grow a family. We need to grow our population. And I know in this state there's, the highways are so crowded, we don't need any more people. We are one of the slowest growing states in the nation. We are one of the best educated states in the nation. We need to have more people here, highly educated, to perform in this new world of work. And we've got to think through that. We have been resistant to growing this population. There's a reason we're not growing. It's not just because jobs aren't here. Our zoning, the way we look at our investments, does not encourage growth. And I will finish on this note. The millennial generation is telling us they want to live in cities, the Brooklyns, the Manhattans, right? The Austins, the San Franciscos. That's where the talent is. You look at these job postings, most of these kids, that's where they want to live. We need to attract them to Connecticut. They need to feel welcome here. And one of the things we're looking at is how do we make Connecticut attractive to talent? Is there a way through our tax code or through the cost of education that young people will say, wow, if I go to Connecticut, this is going to be one of the places that really attracts talent and is willing to pay for me to be there. That's a thought. So I'll just end on that note, but population growth is critical to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.